As the days go by, it could not be more perfect. The sun shone brightly, the skies were clear, the birds were chirping, and I should be somewhere. I stared at the ceiling, wishing to sleep in for a few more minutes. Wake up. I decided it was better to wake up now rather than later. The early bird gets a worm after all. Once I got dressed, I left the house. I realized it was already pretty late. The crowded streets were full of life, footsteps causing a rumbling sound, just as my stomach did the same. But I didn't want to miss the better paid quests from the guild house, so I left in a flurry, my vibrant red hair flowing against my shoulders. Little did I know that adventures could be found in the place you least expect. Hmm. Oh, that's cute. That is cute. Hmm. Is that all there is? Okay, when I opened my drowsy eyes, the sun warmed my face, as if to tell me it was time to wake up. Crap, it's already midday. The earlier I can get to the guild house, the better chance I have of getting better quests. And the better the quest, the better the pay is. Once I got dressed, I left the house. I realized that I would have to try to find a shortcut. Choosing to get to the guild house by using alleyways would be the best method. The town almost looked different when you observed it from the back alleys. It was charming, and I could not help but gaze around in awe and wonder. However, it was soon apparent that I was lost. Very, very lost. It should have been around here. The only things I could see around me were stone walls. This was nowhere close to the guild house. I wandered along the lane, hoping for anything to get me out of this quandary. As I turned the corner, I came across what seemed like a small cafe, hidden amongst the vines. It looked small, but the aromas wafting from it were a painful reminder that I had not eaten anything today. I could hear my stomach grumbling in response. Well, I doubt one small snack will take up too much time. Taking long strides, I pushed the door and walked into the cafe. Nothing could have prepared me for what was inside. It was small and empty, with a delicious array of desserts and treats lining the shelves and a display behind the counter. My stomach grumbled loudly at the sights and the aroma in front of me, loud enough to get the young man's attention behind the counter. Can I help you? His mismatched eyes were the first thing I noticed about him. They were distinct and pretty. I'm not sure why they made such an impact on me. Smiling back at the young man, I replied, "Hi, what's the best you have?" Little did I know that the fateful encounter would change my whole life. That looks cute? What do you mean Salazar is missing? Fiona, please, could you keep it down a little? Leon's voice had dropped down to a whisper as he glanced furtively around the empty cafe. There's no one else here, Leon. Why do we have to be quiet? My words seemed to have made Leon self-conscious. He straightened up, opening and closing his mouth as if to carefully choose his words. I kept coming back to the Cafe Amor whenever I could. The small cafe tucked away in the lanes had delicious food at great prices. I became friendly with Salazar, the owner, and Leon, the man behind the counter since finding this place. Thea, what I'm trying to say is he's gone. He said one day he was leaving for a walk and then never came back. Do you think he accidentally got teleported back home? Fiona, the word is teleported, and I don't know. With an exasperated sigh, he leaned forward and rested his forehead on the countertop. Wow, must be bad if he's leaning on a counter. That's something he usually glares at me for doing. Leon had once told me that he came from a different world. To be honest, it didn't make a difference in how we spoke to each other. But I suppose it explains why sometimes the most basic things confuse him, like how to tame fire spirits and avoid touching Bramberry at all costs, unless using dragon scale gloves. Reach out to ruffle his hair? It was far too tempting. I couldn't help but reach out to ruffle Leon's hair. The way it shone in the sun reminded me of wheat fields. A loud crash sounded through the cafe. Leaning over, I saw that a plate had fallen over, and the remnants of a once perfect phoenix flan lay on the floor. Ah, I had left one for you, sorry. That's such a waste. Hey, do you think I can run a sanitizing spell on it? I can't put it back together for you, though. I'll clean it up, it's fine. It's shaping up to be a terrible day, though. What do you mean? What else happened? When Leon stood up once again, I didn't have the heart to tell him that there was a giant red mark on his forehead. Yeah, I'm broke. Well, that makes the two of us. I should probably offer to pay him if he's really broke and his boss is missing, but he can probably just make more desserts to sell. Meanwhile, I'm a warrior who had been banned from the guild house until today for breach of peace. It's not my fault that Elf tried to steal my coin purse. Did you say something? What? Oh, nothing. When he looked up at me, Leon looked afraid. If anything, I had spent a lot of time with him over the past few months. He could sometimes be nervous, and he hated confrontation of any type. This was the first time I had seen him look like this. I really have no idea what to do at this point. Leon, we'll think of something. A loud crash caught our attention, and we ran outside the store. The alley, previously calm and secluded, was now a flurry of activity. I asked a passerby what was going on. Beyond the city wall, in the forest, there's a rampaging dragon. I looked towards Leon to find that he was already looking at me, wide-eyed. We should go take a look. We should go back inside. An awkward moment passed as we both tried to process what the other person had said. Ah, well, in that case, how about I go back inside? No, can do. The forest is right behind the cafe. But if the dragon comes here first... Why would it come here? Or the kitty burger? Thea, please. I'm being serious here. Likewise, Leon. I cross town every day for the kitty burger. Leon gave me a withering glance. I grinned back. At any rate, I would be able to protect you better if you were close to me. I most definitely do not need protecting. The last time we saw a manticore, you shrieked. Told me it ate humans. Only the ones that argue too much. I tried my best not to laugh at his anger, We kept on bantering back and forth as we walked. It was far too easy to distract him after all. So much so that he didn't even realize we had made it to the forest by now. All of a sudden, Leon paused and looked around, up and down. Fiona, where are we? As if to answer his question, a screech so fearsome that it shook the trees echoed through the woods. Judging by that sound, pretty close to where the dragon is. I pulled out my sword as quietly as I could, taking a step in front of Leon. I beckoned for him to follow me. Out of the trees emerged a dragon that seemed agitated to say the least. That should make it easier to distract. Okay, that's how you save. Right, Lord and Chat. Quick, how can I use the terrain around me? Taking careful steps backwards while feigning attacks, I tried to lure the dragon into a more dense part of the forest. It would be easier to subjugate the beast if it had restricted movement. Fiona. I could barely hear Leon's voice above the dragon's roar, but looking around I couldn't see him anywhere. Panic welled up in my chest. Where did he go? I spotted him a little further into the forest, almost hidden by the foliage. Ducking under the dragon's latest attack, I made a dash towards Leon. When I got closer, I realized his gaze was focused on something else. In the near distance, without breaking eye contact, he pointed in the direction he was looking at. I think this may be the reason the dragon stole that. Oh. In the clearing, there lay an infant dragon. Its right talon lacerated, with injuries caused by a metal claw clamped around it. A cruel hunter's trap, oh no. The dragon looked to be in so much pain, I dropped my sword and rushed in without thinking. Only to be knocked back against the nearest tree trunk by a mighty gust of the grown dragon's wing. I scrambled up to my feet, glancing at Leon. The fear hadn't left him, I could tell, but he seemed better than he was earlier. This has to be the infant's guardian. We have to somehow distract it so that I can free the baby from that trap. I can hear Leon audibly gulp beside me. I'll go. Can you cover me? Before I could protest, he had made a break for the clearing. Be careful, Leon. I couldn't afford to spare too much concern for him, not with the dragon zeroing in on me. The only thing I could do right now was to act as a diversion, so I did my best to not lose the dragon's attention for a single moment. Flashing here and there, I moved around the dense foliage, but I made sure not to lend a single blow to it. Its large frame was encumbered by the branches, and endure as its cries rang in my ear. Good, just have to keep this up for a bit. I was not sure if minutes or hours had passed, but when the shrill cry of an infant dragon sounded in the distance, I let out a sigh of relief. The dragon in front of me turned towards the source of the sound, and without sparing me a glance, made its way towards the infant. By the time I ended up in the clearing, I saw a sight in front of me that I could never have expected. Via, help please. The baby dragon lay on the floor, facing a cross-legged Leon, his injured paw on Leon's lap. The dragon affectionately nuzzled him, and in the process almost knocked him over. Adorable. It wasn't until Leon had called out to me, probably 3 more times, that he got my attention enough to go over and help him. Take care of yourself, will you? You worry me sometimes. It was true. He did worry me. But the truth was that he could handle himself just fine. It was then that I realized that Leon would be the most perfect partner for a quest. Thea, I'm not exactly what you call an outdoor. Let me count. The 4th time you used that excuse today? Even while standing outside the guild house, Leon had been cycling through his 6 favorite excuses. You are an asset. You would be a great addition to the team. I don't think I've genuinely seen a baby dragon warm up to anyone so fast before. I will protect you from all the scary things and will be splitting the gold in half. If you still don't want to come along, well, I can't force you. It would be fun with you, though. In the end, it was his decision. I had brought him here, but there was nothing else. Fine. I could do at this stage, if anything, I would really miss the kitty burger meal and... Fiona, hello. What? Oh. If you weren't listening, then I'll be off. No, Tommy, please? That'll go with you if you want. You will? Really? Without thinking, I threw my arms around him. He responded with something akin to a gasp and a squeak. Together. A little while later, we were back at the cafe. Our guild house trip was a success, and having received our first quest, we had to make a plan of attack. So, you want me to draw up something like a painting then? What? Would you need that nature couldn't provide for you? A lot of things, some ingredients for one. The cafe was only inhabited by us. And a couple in the distance. I looked over at them and smiled. Hey, you should give them a free drink. Maybe one they can share? Huh? Why? My voice dropped down to a whisper. They're on a date, obviously. Did you forget how we had a decision earlier on the cafe being on the verge of bankruptcy? Come on, what's a little sweet drink in the name of love? I suppressed my laugh as Leon rolled his eyes and muttered something under his breath before leaving for the kitchen. The scene in front of me reminded me of a conversation we had in the past. But that was so cruel. Leon wordlessly handed me a tissue, and I nodded my thanks before blowing my nose. Thea, this is only the beginning. What? There's more of this? Right, yes. Using illusion magic and Salazar's help, we had managed to have something called a movie night. Leon tells me this is a common pastime from his homeland, but this doesn't seem fun right now. Leon seemed to understand my hesitation and turned towards me. If you don't want to do this, we can stop. I shook my head vehemently. It's not that. I want to know what you used to do for fun when you were back home, too. I just can't see how this is fun. Well, think of it like a minstrel's bout. You have to hear all of it to find out what happens. Back home, we watch stuff like this. You just have to wait till the end to see how it turns. Will they be sad? I promise you, it won't. The story turned out to be the love story between two people who ended up together despite Sylvia rejecting David at first. Although I kind of thought the pickup line about it hurting when you fall from heaven is kind of cute. Leon says it's something they called cheesy. The movie ended with David making her the most delicious looking dessert to ask her out on a date, and an idea suddenly struck me. Leon? Startled Leon looked up at me from behind the counter, and I couldn't wait so I rushed over to tell him. Leon, what if we made a dessert? No, it's fine. I can manage the kitchen just fine. No, I mean for the cafe. Do you remember the illusion we watched? The movie? Yes, in the end, David made Sylvia a dessert, right? If he can do that to win over her heart, I'm sure you could come up with something new to win over everyone's heart here. Leon didn't respond right away. Maybe we'll find some lovely new ingredients while venturing, and it could inspire you to create something amazing. Although everything in this cafe is so good, I'm not sure how it could be beat. Fiona. Smiling, I rested my elbows on the countertop and leaned forward. What do you say, partner? Are you ready to create a masterpiece? A smile appeared on Leon's face, and I felt like it was matching mine. Sure, partner. Quickly making our preparations, we left for the forest at the crack of dawn. The deeper we made it into the forest, Leon's confidence became shakier. Yeah, maybe we should have packed more ingredients before leaving. I don't know if I could make anything very good with what we find out here. As if you could ever make something that tastes as bad. What? No, I do sometimes. I make things that taste awful. Sometimes Leon had the habit of saying the most contrary things out of embarrassment. Mm, take this opportunity to tease him. Well, maybe you should try making something awful right now. Right now? Why not? It's about time for our next meal, right? Didn't we just have lunch an hour ago? Besides, I wouldn't want you to get sick or anything like that before we start the class. Grinning, I turned back to face Leon. He was kneeling on the floor, rummaging through his backpack. He sometimes takes things too seriously, but that's endearing in its own way. An hour ago was a long time ago. If there was anything I learned while being an adventurer, it was that I was meant to be alert all the time. Yet at that very moment, I forgot my own teachings, and before I knew it, I found myself falling backwards. I felt myself fall on damp, unyielding earth. Having braced myself for the fall, I made a quick assessment for injuries. Good, nothing seems broken. I let out a sigh, looking around what seemed to be a cavern. The only light source was above, much, much higher than I could reach. Oh, I think I hear Leon. Leon, what's your oh my god. My warning came far too late as I saw Leon stumble through the same hole that I had fallen through minutes earlier. Without thinking, I moved myself in order to break his fall and found myself cradling Leon. He's warm. It was a mundane observation, but we had never been this physically close before, I realized. Our faces were close enough for me to be able to count his lashes. Are you okay? My voice seemed deafened by how loud my heart was beating. Fine, I'm fine. His voice sounded just as quiet. I couldn't help but wonder if he could hear my heart beating too. I never realized how beautiful his eyes were. Up this close, I could see my reflection in them. You're lucky I was here. Yeah, right. I wouldn't have fallen down the ditch if I wasn't looking for you. I warned you, didn't I? Maybe if you weren't shouting from the depths of hell, I could hear you. You're no angel, you know. He glanced away from me and I felt my heart skip a beat. Why on earth would you say that? Put me down already, will you? Oh, excuse me, princess. I moved my arms, letting him fall to the ground. Oh. I tried to ignore his indignant glare of the violent blush that spread over his cheeks as I busied myself in packing up the items that spilled out of his backpack. How will we get out of here? I see an opening up ahead. Let's make our way through it, see what's on the other end. The opening led to an impossibly long and cramped tunnel, forcing us to crawl at some point. When we emerged out on the other end, we still found ourselves in a ditch. This one was deeper than the previous one, though. Let me see if I can climb up. Unfortunately, the mud-packed walls were too slippery for me to get a decent hold on it. The sun had begun to set as well. Letting out a flustered sigh, I kicked the wall. I can't believe I got us trapped in here. There must be something we can do. I'm sure of it. Suddenly, a cup of warm liquid was placed in my hands from behind. Huh? Well, earlier I found some herbs that make a nice tea. I put it in the thermos I was carrying. He shrugged with a small smile and sat on a log piece, then patted the seat next to him. I quietly sat down beside him, sipping the warm drink in my hand. It's nice, refreshing. I didn't know I needed this. Moments of silence passed between us, but they weren't uncomfortable. You're surprisingly calm about this whole fell into a ditch situation. I'm not calm, I'm definitely maybe kind of scared, but I trust you feel. His words made my face feel warm. Thankfully, we only had the moonlight for company, or else it would be difficult to talk myself out of this. Thanks. My words were mumbled into my cup, but I could hear Leon trying very hard to stifle a laugh from being beside me. Got it! Before I could help it, a giggle escaped my lips, too. After our mini laughing fit subsided, Leon spoke with a gentler tone than any I have heard before. Want to call it a night? Sure. Want to take the bed? I patted the log we were both sitting on. I thought about taking the other side of the log, maybe to keep some form of protection between us, if you turn out to be a sleepwalker with that gigantic sword of yours. Oi, you. Another laugh escaped my lips as I pinched his cheeks, and our laughter continued into the night. The night came and went. I woke up feeling a lot more refreshed, and the smell of something wonderfully appetizing greeted my nose. Rubbing my eyes, I barely looked over to the source of the delectable scent. Good morning, sleepyhead. Who are you calling a sleepyhead? My only answer was a chuckle. Sitting up, I stretched from side to side. Something smells really good. Looking over at Leon, I noticed he seemed to be cooking something on his frying pan. Oh, hey, did you finally learn to light a fire by yourself? Unfortunately not. I have some magic flint that Salazar loaned me. That smells amazing, Leon. What is it? I was standing beside him by now. He looked up at me smiling. Why would something simple like that give me a fluttering feeling? When daylight hit, I actually noticed some edible fungi growing on the walls over there. Leon pointed to the side of the ditch opposite to where we had entered from. I have a handful of spices on me, and I did pick up some herbs along the way, so... Good morning once again, here's breakfast. He handed me a bowl of delectable mushrooms. I took a bite almost immediately. Oh my! Leon, this is so good. You got to add it to the Cafe Amor's menu. Sounds like a great idea, but for now, we should probably think about how to get out of here first. I hate to survive on those for the next year or two. They're so good though, I wouldn't mind. I could run out of spices and herbs, or worse. Leon leaned in close and his voice dropped down to a whisper. I'd run out of... I gasped, playing along with his joke. Now that would be terrible. We can't let that happen. Perhaps we should start rationing the mushroom. That's true. Well, next time I can only let you eat a quarter of that. No fun. Maybe they grow really fast, so we won't have to ration that badly. I suppose that's pop. Stopping mid-sentence, Leon's gaze was now fixed on the wall where the mushrooms grew. He rushed up to it, expecting the mushrooms at a close glance. What's wrong? Nothing. Well, if I'm not mistaken, this is a certain type of fungi. Needs plenty of water to grow. And I'm sure there are already more fungi growing here than the ones I took this morning. Ah, do you think there's a water behind here? Yes, and plenty to facilitate growth at this level. Turning around to face me, Leon gripped my shoulders and spoke more excitedly than I had ever seen him speak before. So, by that logic, if your inflow volume is significantly greater than your outflow volume, you should have a temporary overflow. Does that make sense? Yes, somewhat. I guess what you're saying is that if there's a lot of water back there, we can flood this ditch, correct? Exactly. If we can get a hole big enough for the water to rush in, we can temporarily flood this ditch. I grinned at him. You better collect all your things in that case. If there's one thing I'm good at, it's max damage. Ah yes, right. I should do that. I waited for him to pack his backpack, and I saw Leon hesitate on where he should put his unwashed frying pan. I suppose if you hold on tight, and this goes according to plan, it'll wash itself. A grin slid across his face, but he listened to me and gripped it with both hands, as if that weapon of his would fight both monsters and men. He's always so honest with his expressions. Taking a deep breath, I held the sword above my head and brought it down on the cavern wall. The rock faded between to splinter, and both of us shielded ourselves from the stone fragments. The water came flooding in before I could even react, and with all my might I began to swim upwards. The force of the water rushing in and upwards had washed up both of us to the surface. Swallowed water, lots of it. I patted him on the back. Yes, stop, please. Maybe a bit too hard, it seems. I used a quick wind spell in order to dry ourselves and our personal belongings. Fantastic! I wasn't entirely sure if this was going to work, but that was absolutely genius of you. Looking over, I found Leon lying motionless on the floor. Leon? I think I've used up all my energy for the day. Please go on without me. It's almost like I can see his HP fall to critical levels. I can carry you, Leon. Please don't bruise my ego. No, really. You're well within my weight limits for lifting. By the time I had gotten Leon up and running, evening had begun to set. It was dark by the time we managed to eat something. We were huddled by the fire finishing up the last of our meals. An eerie sound caught both of our attention, and we looked at each other in alarm. It almost sounds like scuffles and hoof beats at once. I raised a finger to my lips, and Leon nodded, pursing his lips, pulling out my sword from his sheath. We stepped into the forest together. Without thinking much, I reached out to hold his hand. Don't want you to get lost. Sure. But truthfully speaking, it sounded a bit like an excuse to my own ears. We came across a clearing soon enough, and what we saw took our breaths away. Whoa. Oh. There was a herd of unicorns on the other end of the clearing. Scattered over the floor were crystals unlike anything I've ever seen. The unicorns were distinctly shying away from the crystals. Oh, they feel like ice. While I had been focused on the unicorns, Leon had gone ahead and picked up one of the crystals. They don't melt, but they crumble very easily. I wonder why they're so scared of stepping on these. I reached out to pick up one of the crystals. Ouch! It was searingly hot. Even the briefest of touch left a scald on my finger. Are you okay? I'm fine, really. But Leon wouldn't hear me, instead grabbing the hand that I had injured and inspected it in the moonlight as best as he could. Does it hurt? My response felt like it was stuck in my throat. Leon looked up to me, and when our gazes met, it felt like time had stopped entirely. You can be honest with me, you know? That was where the problem was. Being honest was not easy. I'm not used to showing any form of weakness. This feels strange. Tell you what, since these crystals don't hurt me, I'll go ahead and start picking them up. You wait right there, okay? I was barely registering his words, instead choosing to focus on how his hands were holding me steady. He's always there supporting me. Leon's the one person I would be most adrift about. The day we had met, his presence had slowly grown in my life, and it was at this stage I realized how irreplaceable he had become. Yana? We were close, and yet neither of us made any effort to move apart. Maybe I could have said something when Leon's nose brushed against mine, and he paused, but I didn't. Taking that signal as affirmative, he pressed his lips against mine, and I did not hesitate in kissing him back. It wasn't fireworks, it was a feeling of looking at the starry sky above. It didn't feel dramatic in any way, it just felt right. So much better than I could have imagined. As we pulled back from each other, I could see the fierce blush spread across Leon's cheek. It was bright, even in the dim light. Take care of yourself, will you? You worry me sometimes. Before I could retort at him for using my own line on me, he left to gather the crystals. I could hear him laughing softly. I could only watch on, smiling so widely that my cheeks began to hurt after a while. Back at our camp, Leon held a handful of the crystals in his hand. I wish we could use this in our desserts. It would make things like ice cream so much easier to transport. Holding it up against the campfire, he frowned intently at them. They do look very pretty, to be honest. And they smell really nice, too. Kind of like peppermint. Smells like paper? Ah, I suppose paper does have a smell. No. Peppermint is a common herb from my home. I leaned in slightly, wondering if I could get the scent of this elusive herb in the crystals, but leaning in, for its own surprise. Oh, it doesn't feel warm at all, in fact. I reached out to tentatively touch the crystal. Liana, what do you think you're doing? He didn't manage to move his hands away in time, though, and I was pleasantly surprised to feel coolness at my fingertips. Leon, these ones, your hands, they feel cold. Leon looked back at me with a perplexed expression. Look. I grabbed a handful of crystals from his hand, smiling at the way it turned into a fine crumble with pressure. We should check if these are edible. I'm sure you can make the most beautiful desserts with it. Once we were back in town, we asked sorcerers and physicians to check for any potential poisons or health complications. There were none, thankfully. When dusted on food, it added a refreshing taste to desserts, and kept them cool for longer. Looking at Leon put together the final touches on the most beautiful dessert I had laid my eyes upon, I gasped as he stepped back. Oh, that's so silly but pretty at the same time. Leon, it looks amazing. Yeah, that's not bad. He glanced towards me. Do you want to try it? Yeah, sure. Let's or I can do that. Let's do that. Nodding, I leaned forward and opened my mouth, ready for a bite of bliss. What are you doing? Waiting. The blush on Leon's cheeks started growing rapidly, and I saw him gulp audibly, before murmuring something under his breath. Don't you want to let me try it? Fine here. With a lot less aggression than his embarrassment seemed to suggest, he scooped up a spoonful of the dessert and held it out for me. Wow, it's beautiful. Yeah. Grinning, I closed the space between the spoon and myself, taking the bite. Oh my stars, this is so good. You say this about everything I make, though. Yet, there was no hiding that he was pleased with the outcome, too. I can't explain it to you well enough. Here, try some. I held out some for him to try. He just looked from the spoon in my hand to my face and back. Is it my turn now? Of course, open up. He seemed to be almost analyzing the flavors as he took a bite. With a concentrated frown, his face soon relaxed into a smile. Not too bad. Wow, that's high praise in your books. Oh, I'm not that self-deprecating, am I? Any progress is good progress, Leon. I pat him on the back, ignoring the indigent huff I got in return. Anyway, have you thought up of a name for this? Well, given that this is Cafe Amor, we could use that in the name. What about Appetit Amor? I look back at the dessert, the sparkling swirl of crystal around it, the delicate decorations, the tantalizing way the flavors dance over my taste buds. It was love at first bite. Appetit Amor, that's perfect. Couldn't have done it without you. Whoa, this queue is so long. Squeezing my way through the crowd outside Cafe Or, I heaved a sigh once I made it through the door. Leon was behind the counter instead of the kitchen. I weaved my way through the crowds and towards the counter. Looks like someone could use some help. Leona, hi. Leon smiled towards me while packing up a handful of Galaxy jelly cookies. I'm serious, Leon. Do you want me to help out? It's fine, don't worry. Aren't you meant to be at the guild house now? Yes, but I wanted to drop by before I left. I'm glad to see this place is doing well. You know, it wouldn't have been possible without you. Not true. They're here because you do such a great job, you know. I smiled towards Leon brightly, who returned it in kind. I think a customer cleared her throat in order to catch our attention, or more likely Leon's, as he was still in the middle of packing her cookies. I'd best be off then. Yeah, of course, take care. With one last smile and a wave, I left the cafe. Grinning to myself, I pulled out the snack I swiped from the store and took a bite. I'll pay him back next time, of course. He was just far too busy today. Or I could get something extra for him during this adventure. After coming back from our shared adventure, we decided to continue doing what we did best. We never saw Salazar again, but Leon was far more confident in running the cafe. It was more successful than ever, and I was more than happy for him. My adventuring had been going immensely well since then too, with the credit of discovering a new culinary ingredient. Leon's ability of nullifying poison has made him really popular too. Yet this fame has not allowed us to spend as much time together. We have been seeing each other less and less. I missed him, that much was true. And there was so much unsaid too. Perhaps there could have been something more with us.